Hey everybody, this is Kevin from Happy Coding. This is the third video in a series of videos. So in the first video, we defined a drawHouse function, and that function draws a house. And then in the previous video, in the second video, we defined a drawBlock function, which draws 4 houses. And then we defined a drawTown function, which draws 4 blocks and then some roads between those blocks. So that was where we sort of left off in the last video. So I'm starting with the code that we ended with last time. So what we have is our town, which is 4 blocks, and each block is 4 houses. I made a couple minor adjustments to the code since the ending of the last video, mostly just to make the houses just a little bit bigger and the margins around the house is just a little bit smaller. So I changed a couple of these numbers, I think, but the overall idea is pretty much the same. Where you call the draw function, where the draw function is called automatically 60 times a second. The draw function calls drawTown calls drawBlock, and drawBlock calls drawHouse, and then drawHouse finally draws a house. So you have this like hierarchical way to organize your code and achieve like larger goals based on these smaller building blocks. So from here, I want to take it maybe one step further, and then I kind of just want to play around. And I've actually prepared a couple of pieces of code that will make it easier to demonstrate without having to sit here and watch me fiddle around with multiplication math for half an hour. So anyway, the one thing I want to do right away is kind of get right into drawCity, and it's going to be very similar to what we were looking at before, but I promise that this won't take forever. This won't take a very long time because I think I have it figured out already, and I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to do any fancy like multiplication or anything. I'm going to just draw 4 towns in my city. So I'm going to say draw town at city X, city Y, city Y, city width times 0.5, city height times 0.5. So I'm kind of treating it like the rectangle function in a way. So let's start by calling drawCity, and let's see what broke. So I think that's actually pretty right. So my drawCity function right now only draws 1 town in sort of the upper left corner of the city. So let me just kind of keep going with this logic. Draw town, city X plus city width times 0.5, and then the width and height are going to be the same. Again, it's similar to the last time. I could probably factor these out into variables. In fact, I should probably factor those out into variables, but I don't really feel like it, honestly. So let's just push play and let's see what we did wrong. So city X plus city width times 0.5, that should take us here. And did I just not even include city Y at all? I sure didn't. So I need city Y in there somewhere. I'm going to spell city Y wrong 100 times. So there we go. I've drawn my sort of upper left town, my upper right town, and I'm just going to keep on going with this logic. So draw town at city X and then city Y plus city height times 0.5 to get us sort of down here. And then again, I should probably make these variables, but I won't. So I should have one in the lower left, and I do. And then finally, one in the lower right. I'm going to steal some of this logic. So city X plus city width times 0.5. I think that should be right. And there we go. So one thing I'm going to do is get rid of this call to rectangle, which is drawing this sort of rectangle around the towns. And I did that for demonstration purposes last time, but I don't think we need them here. So let's get rid of some of this stuff. And let's just take a look at it. And yeah, I think that looks better. So you see that if I took away the outer rectangle, then you can sort of see each town in my city. So right here in the upper left corner, that's my upper left town, and then in the upper right corner, it's my upper right town, and the whole thing, these 4 towns, zoom out to be my city. And so I can do similar things to what I did last time. Again, I don't love that I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit by using input variables, but just to test it out. So you can see that the stamping kind of logic works all the way down because we've used the arguments that we passed in rather than hard coding numbers like 100 or using the global variables width and height. So I'm pretty happy with that. So let me think about what I want to do here next. Just to maybe put this into more of a final state, let me just fill the screen with it. 0 width and height. So I'm saying fill the screen with the city. Exactly how I might call the ellipse function, I'm going to instead call the drawCity function. And there we go, there's our city. And the sort of hierarchical nature of our code lets us abstract away the fact that this drawCity function calls certain functions. If I'm just looking at the draw function, I don't really need to know what the drawCity function does other than draw a city. So I just give it the parameters that it needs and it works like magic. And that kind of separation between the way you're using the code and the way the code works, that's a very powerful tool. So I could go through and kind of walk through this code, but I think it just repeats the kind of logic that we've looked at a few times now in the last couple videos. So draw calls drawCity calls drawTown calls drawBlock calls drawHouse, and drawHouse calls a bunch of other things. So there we go, there's our city, it's beautiful. And now I want to sort of open things up for myself a little bit, and honestly, it's kind of Friday afternoon. I took the day off, and it's like a nice day outside, and I went on a walk, and I'm just feeling kind of like doing some like relaxed coding to see what happens kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that I honestly just do for fun. I haven't really recorded it before, so I don't know how interesting it's going to be, but I'm just going to play around for 15 or 30 minutes or so and see what I can do with this kind of baseline. So with all of that said, I did prepare for the first time ever. I prepared a couple of things that I want to play around with, and I did that only because I don't think it's very interesting to watch me fiddle around with parameters. So without further ado, let me sort of copy from my secret hidden doc a couple of things. Let me sort of minimize these functions a little bit first. So I've got drawHouse, and is this going to let me do this? Yeah, it is. Cool. So I'm going to just paste in some code. You can pretend that I took the 20 minutes to write this manually, but the idea is that the drawOffice function draws an office exactly the way all of our other functions have worked. So this is very similar to the drawHouse function. drawOffice draws an office building. I'll just kind of demonstrate it real quick. So let me draw an office. Actually, let me comment this code out because I'm going to need it. Not that it's super complicated, but whatever. So let me call drawOffice with some old reliable parameters. So now instead of drawing my whole city, I'm just drawing an office. And this harkens back to the first video where we were only drawing a single house. So the drawOffice function draws a rectangle with some windows and a door. And it's not the most exciting thing by itself, but I'm hoping to use it in some interesting ways. So I have two other functions that are similar. So let me grab them from my off-screen text editor here. You can't see it, but I can. So let me get rid of the drawOffice function. So it draws windows with some rectangles using the same kind of logic. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But let me paste in. Ooh, that's kind of gross looking, but maybe I should have thought about new lines, but whatever. We don't really have to look at the details of this function anyway. I'm going to minimize it in a second. So now I have this drawFactory function. And again, you can pretend that I took the 20 minutes or so to explain it, but really it's the same kind of logic. So it draws a factory by drawing a bunch of rectangles. So let me try draw factory. And there's our beautiful factory. I think maybe I will get rid of this, which might be a leftover of just me messing around. And there's our factory. It's got some smokestacks. It's got a door, some kind of depressing looking windows. I'm not going to call myself an artist, but hopefully that's kind of obvious what it's supposed to be anyway. And let's see what else we got. So I've talked about draw house, I've talked about draw office, and I've talked about draw factory. So only one more. I wrote this other function called draw garden, which again, the exact same kind of logic. It takes in some parameters and draws some content based on those parameters. So let me do draw garden, and you can see my artistic ability goes about as far as squares and circles, but you can imagine that these red things are flowers, and we might mess around with those a little bit later and change their colors or something, but for now just pretend that that's a garden. This white space is kind of driving me a little nuts, but I might change it if we revisit this, but for now I'm not going to think too hard about it. So let me go back to my drawCity function. So what I've done is I've just pasted in some functions that might become useful in a second. I've got the ability to draw a house, an office, a factory, a garden, but what I'm going back to the old code, which calls drawCity, which just will draw houses. And what I want to do next is sort of change the intermediate levels to make this pattern more interesting. So instead of drawing a house every single time, I might draw an office or a factory or a garden. So I think I'm going to put that in draw block, and yeah, this will work for now. I might change this, but let's draw an office. Let's draw maybe a factory, and let's draw a garden. So now every single block will contain these 4 different types of, I don't know what you call them, plots or buildings or whatever, instead of being full of houses. So let me just hit play. And yeah, I think maybe my garden has an extra rectangle around it just from messing around. RGB, yeah, that's right. So I wanted maybe no stroke here. That might break everything, but let's find out. No, I don't hate that. That seems fine. So we've got this city now where each block has a house, an office, a factory, and a garden. So you can kind of see the repeating pattern, but if you zoom out, it's just a little more interesting, I think. The city has some soul to it. I don't know the word for it, but it's more interesting than just 64 different houses, if that's the right number even. So from here, there's a few things I could do. I think I want to play with kind of the idea of randomness. So there are one obvious thing that has been bothering me since the first video is I'm shocked that I didn't paint my house with a random color. So let me kind of see what that would feel like. Let me find where I draw the front of the house. And this is where comments can come in handy. Like I didn't need to read through every single line of code to remember exactly where the logic was for drawing the front. I just looked for the word front. So this is where we draw the front and we give it that kind of yellowy color. And so what I want to do maybe, and I might change this as always, but for now I'm just going to give every house a random front color. And because I know it's going to flash a lot, right now I'm going to maybe say no loop here so that it's just static, just draws once and does not, draw 60 random houses a second. So I like that already, honestly. That's pretty cool. And, if I know what the pattern is, but my human brain is dumb enough that even knowing the pattern, just having those colors, I think makes it look more interesting and a little bit less kind of predictable. So I'm going to play around with that a little bit more. Let me just see what it would look like for the roof to have a random color. So that's here. I might copy this line just to give our roofs. This might end up looking just a little bit too ridiculous, but let's see. No, I'm into that, man. That's cool. I could give my windows a random color. You know, I could just give literally everything a random color. Let's see, man. Why not? I think it's fine. I could go either way, really, but the fact that it's small enough that you can't really tell, it's kind of blurry, but I kind of like that. So I'm going to leave it random, and you know, finally, you know, why not? While we're at it, we're going to have very colorful houses. So now we've got these houses that are kind of random and colorful, and I like that. It's like from the 60s maybe. So now I'm trying to think ahead, like what's the next thing I want to do? I could do something similar with, say, the factories, give the factories a random color. You know, I've got the line copy pasted, so why not try it and see how it feels. Man, I wish I had formatted this code a little bit better from the beginning, but let me kind of quickly do that now. Width, Y, oh man, it's gross. Actually, let me maybe make this a little wider. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. Yeah, it's okay. Hopefully it looks okay on the video. But I wrote that in a different screen resolution, so I wasn't thinking about it. But anyway, so what I might do is give my factories a random color. Let's see. And yeah, I don't hate that. That seems fine. I could give their windows random color. Like I said, I kind of love random colors. And yeah, I think I'm into that. And I could give, yeah, I mean, I think factories are done. I'm going to call factory done. That's pretty cool. I could do another thing with offices. Right now my office is kind of gray and boring. So let's make them more psychedelic. And one thing I should kind of pause here and point out is right now I'm drawing however many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 or so offices. And I want to change all of their colors. I want to change all of their background colors from gray to a random shade or a random color. And the power of creating this function is I only have to change that code in one place. I only need to change one line of code, and magically 16 factories change color. And that's because I've moved all of the logic for drawing an office into this function. So that's sort of the payoff of having this function available. So let me hit play a couple times just to see how we feel. I like that. I'm thinking about what I want to do with the windows. Again, we could just do kind of random. Let's see, I think that might be a little bit too crazy. Nah, I think that's cool. Yeah, I'm into that. And maybe I'll, well, you know, why not? I'm on a roll just giving things random colors, so I'm going to give the doors a random color too. And you can see that like already the city is more interesting, and every city is unique. And even though it's just color, I kind of like the idea of this like procedurally generated city. I don't know what these factories make. I don't know what this like purple factory down here makes, but I'd work there. Anyway, finally let me get down to draw garden. First of all, I think maybe I was a little stingy on the size, so this would have been a good time to use variables and show off how changing the variables would have been so much more organized, but whatever. Maybe change it to, I don't know, 0.4. Those are circles, so it's all about the center. So I changed the upper left. I don't know. I'm going to call this a flower. I don't know what it is. You can maybe call it an apple tree or something. 4 and 4. Let's just see. Yeah, I think that's going to end up looking pretty cool. So 4 and 4, 4 and 4. Yeah, it's a little iffy, but whatever. So I've made my flowers larger in my garden, and I think you can probably guess at what I'm going to do next is I'm going to give those little babies random color. So now all of my gardens, or each of my gardens, has a random colored flower in it. I'm kind of debating whether I want to give the individual flowers a random color. I could try it. I could always delete it if I don't like it. It's kind of like the Bob Ross approach to coding. Like, it's a happy little accident. If it doesn't look right, we can always turn it into a tree. And yeah, I think that might be a bit much. I think that, you know, the other things are pretty obviously houses and factories and offices, whereas for random colored circles, I'm not sure if it's very obvious that those are supposed to be like gardens and flowers. So let me kind of get rid of some of this stuff. Maybe it's not so random. I think that's okay. I think what I might try to do is do something like this, where I create a variable where it's const r equals random 255, and then const g equals random r. And what this does is I'm like picking a more specific set of random colors. So instead of having a mix of pink and green and purple and blue and yellow and more pink over here, like some of those don't end up looking like flowers. Like, I don't know, 4 green circles don't really look like flowers. So I'm going to do something like this, where my R is, it can be anywhere from 0 to 255, but my G will never be above my R. So it will be maybe at most yellow, and my B will never be above my G, so it might just lighten it up a little bit. And I have broken something horribly. What did I break? R, G, B. Oh, I forgot my closing parenthesis. And yeah, I mean, it's okay. I don't know if I love it, but I think it's okay. I could maybe draw some stems underneath those flowers, or I could turn it into like a bush or something, just to make them all green. Could make it empty. Yeah, I kind of don't love the garden, honestly. I think maybe I should have spent a little bit more time checking what it would look like. But anyway, we could spend more time digging into exactly what it looks like to draw a random garden. I think I'll end up getting rid of it eventually, but just to talk about like the concepts, what we've done is we've defined this drawCity function, which calls our drawTown function, and our drawTown function calls our drawBlock function, and our drawBlock function calls the individual little stamps inside each block. So we draw a house, we draw an office, we draw a factory, and we draw a garden. I don't love the garden, but we'll cross that off our list in a second. So then inside of each individual drawing function, it uses some level of randomness, so that each time that, say, a house is drawn, the house looks a little bit different. And again, that's sort of the hierarchical conceptual way to organize your code. Okay, cool. So I've added some randomness, and that's cool, and I like that. And I could stop there, but like I said, it's Friday afternoon, and I'm just going to kind of noodle on it for a minute. One thing I want to do is maybe make it so it's not the same exact pattern every time. So right now we always draw a house, then an office, then a factory, then a garden, then we do the same thing. So what I want to do is maybe introduce some randomness into the drawBlock function, and let me think about how I want to do that. Yeah, okay. I think what I want to do is maybe introduce yet another function, and I didn't plan that, but man, am I really demonstrating the process of creating functions, because I'm creating so many. I want to call it something like drawPlot, and by plot we mean like the individual, like a house is a plot, a factory is a plot, an office is a plot, a garden is a plot. So plot x, plot y, plot width, plot height. So very similar to what the functions we've drawn already. And what do I want to do? I want to say draw a plot here. So I'm going to draw 4 plots. And what I want to do, so I've realized that I'm going to work one step ahead. If you are going through the tutorials and you're like right here in creating functions, then this is hopefully an interesting video for you. But I'm going to use something from the next tutorial, which is an if statement, but everything else you'll have seen before. So what I'm going to do is, so in our draw plot function, which right now does not do anything, I'm going to first do something like create a random variable. So I'm going to say const r equals random, and I'm going to do it between 0 and 1. And r, in this case, it doesn't stand for red or anything. It's just kind of random. It's just a placeholder variable. And what I want to do is have an if statement that says if r is less than 0.25, so 25% of the time, I am going to draw a house this time. And I'm going to pass in these values. And I can say else if r is less than 0.5, so another 25% of the time, then I'm going to draw, what did I draw next? Draw an office. Draw office. And I can keep going. What is this complaining about? Else if r is less than 0.5. Come on, p5, tell me a leading. Wait, that's not. Let me just read this for a second. So I've got if r, then I've got else if. This should work. Let me think about this for 1 second. I'm sure I have a silly typo. Let me maybe open up my console. Does that tell me anything? Let me try to hit play. I'm going to copy everything in case I break everything. And yeah, I don't know, p5. I think you might be lying to me. Oh wow, okay, yeah, that's like a weird artifact of p5. Like p5 is underlining this with a red, and that makes me very paranoid that it's like an error, but I think it's not. It's just like a warning. P5 is very particular about how it wants you to format decimals, and I actually respectfully disagree with their recommendation. They want it to be 0.5. I prefer 0.5, and they're underlining it as if it was an error, but it's not. P5. I think you should calm down a little bit. So I'm going to keep going. Else if r is less than 0.75, then I'm going to draw, let's say factory, draw a factory, and otherwise I'm going to draw a garden. So what this logic is doing is basically giving a 25% kind of random chance to draw each type of plot. So now draw block draws 4 different plots, and the draw plot function draws a random type of plot. And let's see if that works. So yeah, I think it does. I think there's something goofy with my stroke color, maybe, but I'll fix that in a second. But anyway, what I've done here is I've changed the sort of static nature of the pattern. So before it was whatever it was, house, office, factory, garden. Now it's factory, house, office, and factory, office, garden, office, and there's houses in there, and each one has a random chance to be drawn in each little cell of our city. All right, while I'm looking at this, let me maybe fix that stroke color. It looks like it's for the office and the in the factory. So let me just real quick do stroke 0 for our offices. Now all of our offices should be back to normal. It looks like they are. And let me fix the factory. And you know, I'm saying fix, but really it would be up to us to decide whether that behavior was broken or not. You know, if you want randomly colored stroke lines, and that's cool, go for it. But me, I think I'm going to try to have a little bit more of a, you know, an outline. Cool. I'm pretty happy with this. So we have each kind of plot showing up with a random chance, and from here we could play with the random chances. So I could say, you know, actually draw a house. I want 50% of my city to be houses, and then I want maybe only let's say 10% of my city to be offices, so like between 0.5 and 0.6 of a random chance. And then I want, you know, this would make it 15% factories and then still 25% gardens. So let's just see what that looks like. So yeah, you can kind of see that it's mostly houses, kind of a lot of gardens, and then not many factories and not many offices. So while I'm here, because I don't like the garden at all, I think I might just say goodbye to it. I just might say bye garden, we no longer have gardens, and I might take these down to 0.3, 0.6, and this will just become an else. So now there's a 1/3 chance of drawing a house, a 1/3 chance of drawing an office, and a 1/3 chance of drawing a factory. Yeah, I like that. These are like clearly buildings. Maybe they're not the best looking buildings, but I think at first glance you can sort of tell what I'm getting at, which is, you know, half the battle, honestly. Cool. So, you know, there's many other things we could do. We could kind of give each yard a different color green, maybe. You can kind of do that, I think, if that sounds interesting to you. I think I'm going to keep it kind of like this. Yeah, I'm going to hold myself to that because it's been about a half an hour, I think. So I'm going to try to close it out. Another thing I'm tempted to do is add some variety to the draw block function to not always draw four plots. So what I could do is sometimes it's like two really tall buildings or two really flat buildings, and you do that in the same way that you have this like if R logic down here. Let me just maybe let me think about this. Yeah, let me give it a shot. Let me just see what it feels like. So let me do another kind of random between 0 and 1, and then let me say like if R is less than 0.5, then I'm going to do something, and otherwise I'm going to do what I'm already doing. So otherwise I'm going to draw 4 like I am now. And let's see if this works out. That's cool. So what I want to do is maybe steal some of this code, and what I want to do is draw two, I'm going to call it two tall blocks. So I've got block width times 0.3, block height times, I think what I'm going to do here is something like 0.7, you know, we'll see what it looks like. But what I've done is I've drawn two plots and I've given them like their left and right, and I've made them taller. So instead of drawing 4, I'm drawing 2. Let's just see what it looks like. Yeah. Yeah, so you see a few of these blocks are actually 2 buildings instead of 4, 2 plots instead of 4. I guess I can call them buildings now that we got rid of the garden. And, you know, I could go either way. I think I kind of like it. I don't like when, you know, because of randomness, we end up with a bunch of them together. I like this mix in here. So these are kind of like bigger houses, and, you know, I'm realizing now that like there's no way for this person to get out of their house. There's no road, but maybe they like it that way. Maybe there's like a little walkway that we can't see. I like that. That's where I would live. Yeah, that was easy enough. So let me just try doing something like else if And let me change these to 0.3s and 0.6s. So I can change this later, but if r is less than 0.6, and again, I think that's probably going to yell at me, but p5 is lying. And instead of doing the sort of left and right, let me do the top and bottom. And I'm kind of stealing this from my old code because I know I already figured out the sort of coordinates for the left and right. So I've got one upper left, and this time I'm going to change this to 0.7, I think, because I'm changing the width. So let's just see. And yeah, we've got a couple. We've got a couple blocks that are two very wide buildings. We've got a block down here that's two very tall buildings. And yeah, I'm into that. That's cool. Here's where it's kind of mixed together. So yeah, I like that. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll make them mostly small. So I'm only giving it a 25% chance to be two next to each other, and a 25% chance of them on top of each other, and then a 50% chance of the four. So most of the blocks, or half of the blocks actually, are these blocks of four, and then the other half are either next to each other or above each other, like that. Cool. I'm pretty happy with this. I think this is about what I wanted to see, and there's a few things I could do. I'm kind of tempted to do that green thing. You know, I've done pretty much everything that I wanted to except for that. So yeah, let's do it. The way I want to do that is, so I want to take let me do it in the draw plot function. I think that maybe I've drawn the rectangle in some of these individual functions, but we'll detect that, or it won't even matter. So before I draw a plot, what I want to do is draw a yard, basically. So maybe let me make a comment to myself and say random of, you know, we want to make a random shade of green pretty much. So I might do like 0 red. Wait, what am I doing? I want to do like fill of 0 red, random of, you know, pretty green, so maybe between 100 and 255, and then some blue, maybe just to lighten it up and not make it like pure green, make it kind of a teal color in some cases. Maybe I'll do that between 0 and 100. You know, I have no idea what that'll actually look like, but maybe it'll be cool. And then I want to maybe do no stroke because I don't want my yard to have an outline. And then I want to do a rectangle of plot X, plot Y, plot width, and plot height. So I'm just drawing a greenish rectangle before I draw a house, office, or factory. And let's see what breaks horribly. And oh yeah, okay. I see what's happening. So that kind of worked, but because of how our borders work, we have sort of borders inside of our blocks. The yards end up being like really constricted. So actually what I'm going to do is just kind of move this up, and I'm going to cheat a little bit, and this is another kind of Bob Ross style thing. I'm just going to say that a block shares a yard, and so draw a block. First I draw the yard that the whole block shares, and that's kind of cheating, but I think it'll look okay. And oh boy, what did I do? 78, line 78. I'm sure that I just copy pasted something wrong. I deleted something. It's still complaining about this line. Let me just kind of scroll up. Oh, it's actually complaining about line 48. So what did I do here? Did I spell something wrong? Plot. Oh, yeah. Another copy paste error. Again, I think that's been kind of a common theme in a few of these videos is I copy paste a random line, and then that line doesn't work and it breaks my code, and I don't know why. So that's one of the reasons that we say that you should never kind of copy paste code. You should kind of always write it. But I'm into that. I think maybe it's a little too dark, but now each block has its own kind of shade of green, and maybe let me lighten it up even more, maybe make it even more green, and that's pretty cool. I think I like that. Maybe I'll make it less blue. Let me just see what this looks like. Yeah, maybe. you could maybe say that your town has the shared green color, but I don't know, kind of like these random plots or random block yards. Block yards, I don't think that's a word. Anyway. So yeah, the only other thing I want to kind of play with is maybe animating this just a little bit. I don't want to make it too crazy, but let me just kind of sit back here and watch the sort of the fruits of my labor here. And so once per second, what's happening is the draw function is being called, and the draw function draws a city. The drawCity function draws 4 towns, and the drawTown function draws 4 blocks and some roads. And for each block, what we do is we draw a random yard, and then we randomly choose like the layout of our block. We say it's either 2 houses or two buildings next to each other, or 2 buildings on top of each other, or it's 4 buildings. And depending on which layout we chose, we draw a certain number of plots. And then the drawPlot function randomly draws either a house, an office, or a factory. And finally, the drawHouse, drawOffice, and drawFactory functions draw those things based on the parameters that we've given it. And okay, I know I've been talking for probably too long, but I think that's okay. This is my Friday afternoon sort of gift to myself. I just kind of wanted to mess around with this, and honestly, this is the kind of program that I create for fun. Like I'm not doing this just to make an example and just to like show something that's kind of fake and just for educational purposes. Although I do find value in those kinds of examples, this is something that I would like proudly put out on the internet as, here's a thing I made. Because I think it's just kind of, it's kind of goofy and kind of funny and kind of interesting, and you can think about, what it all means, and I'll leave that to out of this, but I think it's interesting, and you could take it further. You could modify this to make some kind of statement. You could, I don't know, for example, you could change your city over time and have it mostly start out as small houses, and then over time add more factories and offices, and there's your sort of urban sprawl. Sorry, we're getting political on this YouTube series. But you could do other things. You could add different kinds of buildings. You could go back to that garden, which is maybe something I would do if I had more time. I mean, I guess time is up to me, but whatever. I'm going to call it quits in a second. But you could draw, I don't know. These are the 4 kind of building types that occurred to me, but maybe you want a skyscraper in there. Maybe you want like a Statue of Liberty, or whatever monument is in the town you live in. I'm not sure what it would be for me. I guess Silicon Valley is just like a bunch of offices, which, hey, I've got them in there. Anyway, so you could take this and run with it in a bunch of different ways. You could make it more realistic. You could make it more like your town. You could make it more cartoony. I'm not sure how you would do this with my neon colors, but hey, I accept the challenge. But what I wanted to demonstrate, and what I hoped I've demonstrated with these last couple videos, is the idea of starting with one unit of your code. And in our case, we started with the drawHouse function. And when we were drawing that house, we didn't even have this in mind, this idea of drawing a city. I mean, I kind of did, but it wasn't like I was worrying about exactly what the city would look like while I was drawing the house. I actually had no idea what this would look like. And that let me kind of isolate and only focus on one thing, which made it a lot easier to accomplish the goal of drawing a house, because I wasn't distracted by the larger goal of drawing a whole city. And again, I've said this before, so I won't spend too much time on it, but you see this kind of thing in professional software engineering a lot, where the team's goal is to do something complicated like draw a city. And so what you do is you split that goal up and you say, hey, person 1, your job is to draw a city, or hey, your job is to draw a house. Hey, person 2, you draw an office. And maybe person three's job is to draw a whole block, but they are going to rely on the code that the first two people wrote, so that you don't always have to write all the code yourself. You can sort of rely on other people and write that code without always stepping on each other's toes, and modifying the exact same part of the code base, and being able to separate it out like that can be really helpful. So even if you're just starting out and you're still learning like the fundamentals of coding, the concepts you're learning now will stick with you, and you'll use them up until the point where you're a professional software engineer, if that's indeed what you want to do. But even if that's not something you're interested in, the ability to organize your own code base is super helpful and lets you do interesting things like this. All right, I'm going to stop rambling. The one last thing I'm going to do is just kind of make this bigger, just to see it in all its glory. Maybe I should have done that before, but I am super duper happy with that. That's a cool little city. Welcome to Kevinville, I guess. All right, I'm going to stop it here. I think this completes the series that I wanted to do. We started with drawing a house, we went to drawing a town, and now we've drawn a whole city. And hopefully that was interesting, and you can apply this concept to other things. So you could do something like Rebecca on Twitter said that she had a suggestion of drawing a flower or a tree, and then drawing like a grove of trees, and then drawing a forest. So you could get really into what different types of trees look like, and I really like that idea. Or you could do something like drawing a flower, and then drawing a garden, and then drawing a whole farm or something. Just the hierarchical nature of what you would draw would be broken down into individual functions. So yeah, if you do something like that, don't be afraid to come say hi. I would love to see any remixes that you make of this. Come say hi on happycoding.io, say hi on the forum, and I will definitely love to see what you came up with. All right, anyway, I'm going to end it there. As always, thanks for watching, and as always, of course, happy coding.